Text. Oh, I got a thing back from Rob.
Audio is hot.
Oh.
Hi.
Now it's working.
Yeah, it's working. Who am I looking at? This is Michael Grant.
No, it's not. You're Western Cowboy or whatever that your handle is.
Hi, Rob.
Hey,
Has the meeting started or?
no, nope. You're just coming in.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob. I just got your text back.
Paul and Tammy are sitting next to me.
Well, you should teach them how to fish instead of just fish for them.
What? Who, me?
Come here, talk.
Hello.
No. Paul.
Hi, Wes.
Good, Paul.
You guys get my email today?
All
Yes.
50 pages of it.
Pardon me?
Pages.
All 50 pages of it.
No, it was only 11. No, that's being, that is, we can't of course present all of that, but that is just for your information, for review and consideration. That's what the whole thing was there for.
Kim, when we're ready to start, tell me.
We are ready to start.
Okay. Here we go. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we've asked Commissioner Johnson if he would lead us.
All right. Well, we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. One quick thing before we move further. I've been asked to read this order that we put out concerning electronic meetings and COVID-19. I'm sure Jamie has it on his computer. He's following along to make sure I don't miss one word. So, order on public meetings of the South Weaver City Planning Commission. I, Robert Osborne, as the chair of the South Weaver City Planning Commission, do hereby find and declare as follows. Due to the emergency conditions which currently exist in the state of Utah, and specifically in Davis County and South Weaver City, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent surge in COVID-19 infections across the state and in Davis County, the holding of public meetings with an anchor location is defined in the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. And two, the risk of those who may be present at the anchor location can be substantially mitigated by holding public meetings of the Planning Commission pursuant to electronic means that allow for public participation by virtual means. And three, the city has a means and ability to allow virtual participation in the public meetings in accordance with the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. Now, therefore, based upon the foregoing, for 30 days from this date of this order, meetings of the South Weaver City Planning Commission shall be conducted by a virtual means without an anchor location dated 26 August 2020. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. The public hearing and action on preliminary site plan and improvements for the lofts at Deer Run, approximately 3.21 acres located at approximately 7870 South, 2700 East by the developer Joseph M. Cook of Deer Run Investments, LLC. So everyone who is on, I've received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 folks that'd like to speak in the public hearing. I know that Michael Grant and Tammy Long and Paul Stern are together in one location, so that is fine as well. We'd like the individuals to please keep your comments to 3 minutes. State your name and address, direct the comments towards the entire Plan Commission, and note the Plan Commission will not respond during the public comment period. I look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the and action on preliminary site plan and improvement for the lofts at Deer Run.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Who second? I didn't
I'll
hear.
second it.
Paul?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, public hearing is now open. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the list I have running here. And I don't see Doug Miller. Is he on? Kim, is he in the waiting room?
No, he's not in the waiting room. He's not here at the moment.
Okay, so we'll let, I know that Michael Grant's on, so we'll let him go first.
And to just to let you know that Jeff Eddings is also waiting at his home. I don't know if he's in queue or not. Michael Grant, 2622 Deer Run Drive, South Weaver. We did a park and protest in September of last year to demonstrate how slow the traffic gets if the cars are parked on street side, due to which the curb was painted red. Many thanks for that. So why do I bring it up now? I want to emphasize that even though it's a Class B, as in Bravo, level of service, that patch of road, it's a vital artery. It's a small artery in comparison, but it's supplying your retina. So it's important because it's the east part of South Weber City, compact, lots of houses are there. The 72 units of lofts with 160 spots means potentially 160 more cars pouring onto frontage road directly, most likely during rush hour, morning and evening. This creates an impact. Ideally, the number of units should be reduced. There are multiple reasons for the number of units to be reduced, and that's the mainstay of my presentation. Remember, Lori Gale told us in August 2017 that she wanted a daycare center. Only 2 cars will be there, and now they want to put 72 units. This truly is misrepresentation of facts, our fault for allowing the zoning change. That's the reference to context. They need to dial down the number of proposed units because of 6 reasons. Traffic on frontage road, pedestrian traffic on the sidewalk, that's the only sidewalk there, the sewer capacity, coming in the way of widening of frontage road if ever needed, coming in the way of the aqueduct, and coming in the way of snow removal. Frontage road may need to be widened down the line. Well, how do you widen it? The narrow portion of the land next to narrow strip next to the frontage road, sandwiched between the frontage road and lofts patch of a parcel of land, is now owned by the owner of the lofts, Deer Run Properties. Earlier, it belonged to UDOT. Really, those narrow tracts of land should have come to South Weber City from UDOT. We should have gotten first dibs at it. How did Deer Run Properties get first dibs? I don't know. It should not have gone to the developers. So the area of that narrow strip is only 0.26 acres. That means the lofts people based on R25 will get 7 more units, very precious to them. But this narrow strip of land is only 12 feet wide. That narrow strip is plenty to widen frontage road whenever we need be, but 7 units is more precious because different interest is working there. So Planning Commission can look into this. What's more important, 7 units to them or 12 units of widened space for eastern 1/3 of South Weber City? What next item? Weber Basin Water Conservancy District Office located in Provo sent me a letter about the aqueduct parallel pipeline project. Why me? Because I'm within 100 yards, 100 feet of this aqueduct. This aqueduct is 2 big pipes of water, each 6 foot in diameter, coming from Weber River by Angie Petty's house under US 89 on the frontage road, or along, I should say, on the west side, all the way to Weber Basin tanks up on the hill. It will travel along frontage road. The letter from Weber Basin Conservancy marks the lofts patch or parcel as disturbed lands in the process. Maybe they are going to stack up dirt or park equipment there. So please make sure Weber Basin Water Conservancy, mouthful, is aware that buildings A, B, and C is where they want to put their dirt and their equipment, while the lofts are in a hurry to start, so it doesn't come in the way of the aqueduct. We have talked about sewer capacity. 74 or 72 units will have an impact on sewer, sure. In the packet, Lofts developer has attached will serve letter, very good. But I recall that in the past, the formal answer was, oh, South Weber City, the sewer is at max capacity, or we don't have enough sufficient capacity. I also recall Barry saying, oh, we have enough sewer capacity, or we will borrow sewer capacity from Uinta as they don't use all of theirs. 30 seconds. Please make sure that the sewer capacity, I don't want the famous oops moment later on. We already had the oops moment when approving the CO zone due to Lori Gale's humane request on putting a daycare center for the hardworking distraught citizen of South Weber City who don't know where to park their kids during the day when they work. Last item, where does the snow go? My understanding is loft buildings A, B, and C are built all the way to the sidewalk. Well, hello, where's the snow going to go? Back on the street. Jeff Eddings and I use our snowplow to clear the sidewalk. That's the only sidewalk on Frontage Road. Look at the foot tracks of kids in the morning. What really has to happen is due to sheer logistics, the buildings A, B, and C need to be set back by 10 feet. This is the buffer zone they should provide. Yes, it will cost the lofts for fewer units. They don't need to pack every single unit. People need to be able to walk. Thank you. Paul, come here.
Thanks, Michael.
We're playing musical chairs. Okay, I sent the Planning Commission a copy of this presentation. It's rather large, so I am only going to address the first portion of it. My comments. It is completely unreasonable for the South Weber citizens to have.
State your name for the record and address.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm not reading completely from my paper. I'm trying to slow it down. Paul Sturm, 2527 Deer Run Drive. Is that okay?
Perfect.
All right. It is completely unreasonable for South Weber citizens to have only 6 days to review a 486-page, 148 megabyte document and then be able to provide meaningful comments for a public hearing. As a result of this very short time frame to review the packet, any action or decision on the preliminary site plan and improvements for the lofts at Deer Run should be postponed so that the Planning Commission has the ability to review and consider both the public's inputs and comments, as well to refamiliarize themselves with past information. In the document provided to you earlier, there is a listing of a bunch of documents, and I've been told that I can provide those to the city at a later date because there was no way of actually submitting them to the city. Now we're on discussion item number 1. Does South Weber have any recourse if the development, when fully occupied, has insufficient parking for all owners and clients? Now only 164 stalls. And I have the computation in there of where this came from, and there is no consideration being given to any visitors to the development tenants. Section PL 8, page 1. Reference to building 1 is incorrect. It has now been broken into buildings A and B. And that is a common error through through a lot of the drawings and everything else that are contained in the packet. On page 424, it shows buildings, I believe, A and B. Then it shows 2 rooms B103. There can't be 2 rooms by that in different buildings. Comment on PL 14, page 6. And there was a question on why is this called the 4th iteration of the preliminary plan? And I know that there were several even on the Planning Commission that were confused about that. I was informed immediately after my presentation to the City Council on 25 August 20 that an iteration is just a change to a document such as a fire department assessment, not a major change to the preliminary plan. The zone C-0, appears to be a major problem with Mr. Burton's presentation and responses to provide a complete compliance assessment of C-O. He did not address every element of that. Citizens were promised by several planning commission members, city council members, as well as city manager, all C-O requirements would be addressed. It appears that a complete point-by-point assessment of zone C-O requirements was not accomplished as promised. Please note that David Larson, South Weaver City Manager, in his 25 July 19 letter to all concerned citizens about the proposed lofts at Deer Run Development, stated, staff, planning commission, and city council will all make sure that every city code is followed and that this development becomes the best it can become considering our situation. Additional questions to this were answered in the South Weaver City webpage facts on 31 July 19. The set of zoning code documentation shown above in that first section where I showed a bunch of documents was provided to the Planning Commission Chair on 22 August 19, a member of the City Council on 5 September 19, and to the City Manager on 18 September 19. This information has been readily available within the city for nearly a year. What I found out also is that the set that I have here is not really totally complete. And I was planning on doing this of adding the documents that are missing and then providing a complete document set package to the city. Another reminder was that during the discussion on the rescission of the C-O code, the City Council promised in open meeting that whenever C-O was presented, the developer would be held to all C-O requirements and no variances granted. And now in this development, the developer is trying to ask for variances. And the variance that what I can see from this is the land that they're talking about developing the lofts on. A majority of that land has had the same topography for hundreds of years. There is no reason that suddenly we need a variance for something that's been there that long. They needed to have designed their plan to match the landscape. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
I probably just stand up so everybody can see me better. Tammy Long, 2178 East Deer Run Drive, South Weaver, Utah. I'm going to start out first with reading in the state code, Title 76, Utah Criminal Code, Chapter 8, Offenses Against the Administration of Government, Part 5, Falsification of Official Matters, Section 502, False or Inconsistent Material Statements. I'm just going to read a couple of parts in here. It says you can read it in its entirety or the attorney can interpret it for you. The first one is the 502 is a person is guilty of a felony of the second degree if in any official proceeding makes a false material statement or makes an inconsistent material statement. There's plenty of more in that code that you can read. The first false document was the application for change of zoning filed by Lori Gale on July 3rd of 17. It was filed in Salt Lake County, not Davis County. Properties in the county have to be filed at the county recorder where the property resides. I recommend that the council make a motion to table this for further review. This that you're acting on tonight with this public comment and public hearing to have the attorneys review that and see if there's anything that can be done to negate that original rezone. Next is on July 9th of 2019, Mr. David, I'm not sure if it's Day or D, Verona, was informed in the morning that the land that CMT Engineering Labs was about to excavate for test holes was on sensitive lands. and that Mr. Verona told CMT Engineering Labs that that was not a problem. This meeting was also documented in the Planning Commission meeting minutes for the 8th of August, 2019. Sensitive lands information was also readily available in the South Weaver City's general plan. Mr. Verona was informed on July 9th of 2019 in the morning also that the lands being excavated for test holes was once the site of a gas station and convenience store. Additionally, he can be seen from his answer in 5D, received a UST, which is an underground storage tank, no further action letter from the state for this property was to be taken. And then so his answers were inaccurate. In fact, he did not even answer 5D properly. Please refer to your packet. Can we go to this one? And the other thing I have is for with the pump for the sewer, they're going to be required to have a pump station for all those additional units. Is there going to be? Oh. Yeah, we should have motion last. And then there's, I'm sure that if Mr.
Dave Verona.
No, the guy,
Oh.
property owner down here, Fred.
Oh, Jeff Eddings.
Jeff Eddings. I'm sure he would like to have the answers for the retention pond as to what's going to happen if there's an overflow. This project has had issues in Sunset City with having the overflow issues, and when they had problems with his developments, with the sewer lines, with respect to the pump station, with respect to Roy City as well, with how the development went there. You need to table this so that things can get looked at further and clarified and get everything found out so that this goes forward the right way. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. I've got Jeff is next.
And he's not even in the waiting room.
Yeah, he is. He's right there.
Oh, in the waiting room is. Okay, he's on. Okay, I keep looking for him in the waiting room.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rob?
Good, good. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you first. I have some comments here from Julie Losi. She wasn't able to get. She was having problems or didn't get in on time. Would it be okay if I read her comments?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. I'm going to go through them kind of quick. I'm just going to read them. So, Julie Losi, 2541 East, 8200 South. Regarding the loft's proposal in front of you for consideration, first and foremost, please do not approve this development tonight. There is more work that needs to be done and many problems that need to be addressed. I have read through every single page of the proposal, all 400 plus, multiple times, and I hope you have as well. So we are seeing the same issues. Number one, there are four parcels located on the south side of the canal. 13-041-0062 at 1.51 acres, 13-041-0068 at 0.388 acres, 1340-0010.51 acres, 13-041-0118.26 acres. The entire target property on the south side of the canal encompasses approximately 2.74 acres, 2.739 acres to be exact. The lot to the north of the canal is parcel 0115 and is 0.31 acres in size, and that lot is zoned residential and was not included in the original rezone request to CO by former owner Lori Gale back in 2017 and is not a factor for consideration when determining total number of units based on acreage. In addition to the development agreement, Exhibit A, the recorded warranty deed, the recorded quit claim deed, and the recorded deed of trust. Exhibit A, all documents show the recorded legal parcel descriptions with Davis County that show the four lots as having 2.739 acres. There is also a letter from Barry Burton dated August 2nd, 2017, says, this is a proposal for rezone of 2.74 acres from CH to CO. These documents have all been included in the attachment below for your review consideration. The Phase 1 environmental site assessment done by CMT Engineering Laboratories from April 10th, 2020 says 2.74 acres in multiple locations throughout the report. The developer is the only one who seems to think he has more land than what the recorded documents from the county show him as owning. From an independent survey that was done and paid for by the developer that clearly states on the August 2019 version, not for recording. And even the December 2019 version that was stamped by the surveyor has an incorrect existing partial description and acreage calculation. I believe there is a transposition with the acreage on parcel 118, and it should read 0.26 acres, not 0.31 acres for the last parcel being described in the upper right section of the survey. A blown up portion has been included for your consideration with my notations, as well as a correction to the north direction arrow notated on the survey. Developer paid surveys do not trump officially recorded documents held with Davis County unless the developer plans on going through the vetting process with the county and having his survey recorded with the county. Does he plan to do this? And if not, then ask yourselves why. Because he knows the size of the lots he has, and it's only 2.739 acres, and per our CO code will only allow for 68 units. I'll say it again, the maximum number of units per our code is 68 units. Number 2, regarding number of parking spaces. I understand that the development agreement recorded on 7/1/2019 says there should be 164 parking spaces, with 74 for residents and the remaining to be shared with the commercial. But I feel that in the best interest of our future residents, each unit should have 2 designated parking spaces. Most households have 2 cars, not 1. There should be no sharing of parking spaces with commercial as the developer has proposed in this development and other developments like the one in Sunset City. With more people working from home and telecommuting, you cannot count on those homeowners being gone for the day and parking spaces opening up for commercial customer use. This is not fair to our future residents and should not be allowed. The 164 spaces does not account for the proposed daycare parking, guest parking, or address what happens in the winter when snow banks pile up and take up precious parking spaces. Having cars spill out into the surrounding neighborhood streets is not a viable option, and parking along 2700 has already been deemed unsafe and marked accordingly due to the narrowness of travel lanes and other factors. If the total number of units needs to be reduced in order to allow for adequate parking for all, then so be it. It is not up to the Planning Commission or City Council or staff to make this development profitable for a developer. It's up to the Planning Commission and City Council and staff to ensure that its citizens have a community where they can be safe and live and park their cars to the very best they can. Oh God, there's a lot here. Regarding the size of the units, the developer is proposing that there are under 1,000 square feet for reference. In Cambridge Crossing, the apartments located in South Weber, a 1-bedroom apartment is 1,004 square feet. A 2-bedroom apartment is 1,215 square feet, and a 3-bedroom apartment is 1,395 square feet. The lots are supposed to be set up to be a step up from apartments and an option for first-time home buyers. 700 square feet is not enough space for 2 people, and especially not enough space for a family. Even if you have a roommate situation, then 700 square feet of space is still an issue, and now you have 2 separate individuals who will need parking spaces for their vehicle. We need the lots to be better housing option for our future citizens, not a worse one. Do we know the developer? As a daycare provider that is weighing in on the design for the daycare location in Building 1. I know that the state has a very specific requirements for access, control of access, open space, play areas, parking spaces, and everything else that you can think of that will need to be considered. Also, what happens to the space should a daycare provider never be found to occupy the space? What then? What protection recourse do we as citizens in the city have? I question the timing of when the traffic studies were done and the actual impacts of 2700 East and South Weber Drive, given that both studies done were not conducted when school in the local charter school or elementary school were in session. I think that there would be an increased percentage to the impacts this development will bring, given current and future resident road usage during the school year, especially considering the plans for a daycare facility, which will definitely have an impact and cause an increase in traffic levels and road usage due to people both inside and outside the community. Driving along 2700 East and South Weber Drive and surrounding roads to drop off and pick up children from daycare in addition to the workers and staff for the daycare. 6, safety for future residents and existing neighboring homeowners is crucial, and not waiving or concession should be permitted when it comes to buffer yard zoning and retaining wall requirements. If a slope of the land is too steep to be deemed safe for residents, then resolve it with doing away with buffer zones and proper retention supports. The land is in the designated sensitive land areas on our general plan and has been for quite some time. Should be given extra consideration and attention to to ensure that something is not done for the developer's benefit that will cause sloping or sliding or other hazardous conditions for future residents and existing neighbors to deal with long after the developer has moved on. Overall building, design and construction materials. I truly feel for the neighbors located to the west that will have to look at the backside of the development. Can you say totally bland and visually unappealing? I would like to see the stone or other materials carried from the front renderings over to the west side of the building to give those having to look at that side of the building instead of the mountain views, something that blends in better with the surrounding landscape. How about a breakup of all the flat areas with beams or other architectural stylings? Where's the character and charm and imaginary that we are hoping to put out to surrounding communities that shows what South Weaver is? As presented, this design is blah. Deposing the 10-foot cement retaining walls right next to the proposed daycare and right alongside the neighboring single home family homes. How is that even safe or in the best interest for anyone? Final thoughts. First, thank you for listening, reading my comments, and for all that you do in the time and care and consideration you are giving these plans. Number two, I'm asking every member of the Planning Commission to stand up for the residents, both current and future, and make sure this development is the very best it can be and is not in its current state. It's just not there. Be your voice and take a stand. Please do not approve these plans. The developer has a lot more work to do. Sincerely, Julie Losi.
So you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to read through that fast because there was a lot. I hope you got all that. So mine isn't as long. So, okay. So Jeff Eddings, 2645 East, 7800 South. First off, I want to go on record stating that I'm adamantly opposed to this development. I feel that this development came to fruition under false pretenses and deceitful tactics. I feel the location is inappropriate and not large enough to handle the type of traffic that will come along with the development. The general plan survey results speak for themselves and myself, along with many other South Weaver residents, do not want to see any more high density housing and commercial buildings constructed in South Weaver. The main focus of my public comments is going to be on the detention basin that's going to be located directly next to my property. So on page 448 of the packet here, the C700 canal crossing plan and profile. My main concern is, first I'm concerned with the water that will be stored in the underground storage. The main purpose of the StormTech underground storm drain storage is for water to be stored and then leach out through the ground. I'm worried that the water is going to leach right into my basin, or my basement due to the location and elevation of the basin. I have an older home and there is not any water barrier around my foundation, and who's going to be responsible when the water level starts to rise and it finds its way into my basement? Second, I'm concerned about when there is a heavy snowpack and a very rainy spring and the ground cannot absorb the water fast enough and then the basin fills up. Yet again, this basin is directly next to my house, and I'm concerned when the outlet orifice can't drain out the water faster than it's coming in and the basin overflows. Yet again, who's going to be responsible for the damage? Additionally, I don't want to hear that studies have been done and the scenario is unlikely. Like the old saying goes, you can't control Mother Nature, and a storm of unprecedented proportions could happen at any time. Third, I'm concerned that the excavation of said basin is literally up to my property line, with a berm being built right up to my property line to the north. Is there no code for setback for such excavation? Fourth, is the detention basin intended to be used as a park for residents? Because it's called the detention park. I'm going to be selfish here and let you know I don't like it. I don't want to look out my window all hours of the day and see people hanging out, possibly engaged in nefarious activity. You may think this won't happen, but it will. I work at night, and many nights when I come home from work, there are people sitting on the grass by the Mavericks, smoking and drinking alcohol. So if it can happen there, it will happen here. I don't want to listen to dogs barking or deal with pet excrement or trash, and the list goes on and on and on. I already pick up enough trash in that field from people throwing it out the windows as they drive by. Are all these users of the park going to walk down to it if it is a park, or am I expected to deal with more people parking in front of my house to access it? I have already went round and round with the city about parking in front of my house. Next, it looks from the plan on page 469 that it's going to be the landscape plan that it's going to be grass and sprinklers and stuff like that. But I'm concerned if this does go through on the north side of the berm where it's all rock, why can't it just be grass all the way around? 6, the plans on page 448 indicate a light being installed near the sidewalk. What is this light for? I already have to deal with the constant flashing of the Maverick sign at night that lights up my whole backyard. Next, I'm going to have to deal with the lights from the car wash and vehicles pointing in my front windows. Now I have this light to the east of me, and I'll have to deal with any other lights to the south of me for the development. I'm going to be lit up like I'm standing in the middle of Wrigley Field during a ball game. I'm sorry, but I'm sick and tired of all the lights. I really hope you take all my concerns and the concerns of my fellow citizens seriously. I expect you to address each of my concerns brought up here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Jeff, can I
Yes.
ask you what your address is again real quick?
2645 East, 7800 South.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got Corinne up next. Corinne, you're on mute. Maybe I'm on mute. No, I'm not on mute.
Hi.
Hi.
So my name is Corinne Johnson. I'm at 8020 South, 2500 East. And first off, I'd like to thank the commission for being here tonight, listening to our comments. I appreciate the opportunity we have to make comment on a public record and vocally. And I know it takes up additional time for our council, people who would just love to get to business tonight to move forward to deny this plan. And you have to listen to all our comments. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. My comments tonight are actually addressed to the fact that I'm going to ask the Planning Commission to deny this plan this evening. I understand that it is the right of a developer to ask for a variance and to bring that forward, and I appreciate that he is doing so. But we have been given many commitments from our city planning commission, city manager, staff, everyone, that every I would be dotted and every T would be crossed on this development, that it would follow code, and there would be no variances granted to make sure that we have the best outcome for our citizens. So this property does include variances, and so we would ask that you deny this at this time, send the developer back to the drawing board, and have him bring a plan that meets our city code. Also, there are some concerns that Sunset Development, that there's some tie through to another name, and Paul wanted me to mention this if he ran out of time, and that, oh, sorry, we got my notes. Sorry, Paul. That Sunset Development LLC has been mentioned in documents during the lost development process, and a recent search shows that Sunset Development is delinquent with the Utah Department of Commerce. So we just wanted to bring that up for our lawyer to look into, make sure that doesn't have any effect or issues here as we're working with this developer on this project. So again, I just want to ask on public record that this development be denied at this time, and that the developer brings back a plan with no variances that meets our city code. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Corinne.
I don't know how we get off.
Kim, do I have any more public comment?
I don't see anybody else. I don't see anybody else sitting here that needs to talk. You guys have all gotten the emails that have been sent through.
Yeah, I want to make sure that Michelle got a copy of all those emails, that they'll be added into the record. Where's Michelle?
She's there. She stuck her thumb up.
Ah, there you.
You lost me. Yes, I did. I got all of them. You there?
Yep.
Yep, I got them.
Okay, good. Yeah, if you'd add those into the record, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll reference them that we received emails, and they'll be attached to the back of the minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, now I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's a public hearing.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Sounds like the ayes have it. Okay, next we'd like to ask Mr. Cook if he would kind of go over his project with us and give us an idea of his vision and start from the very beginning and take the time you need, if you don't mind.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate you being here, each and every one of you, for taking your time. I know you could be, hiking or doing whatever, but I appreciate you being here and taking your time to hear all the input of the neighbors and the community. And it's been a long road. We've had I appreciate all the city officials, Brandon and Barry and the city manager, and all the time they've spent dealing with this project. We've had lots of professionals look at this project, from the city engineer, the city planner, West Coast code compliance consultants, 2 different fire marshals. We've had 2 different traffic studies. We've had geotech studies, environmental, our structural engineer, the city, we have a structural engineer look at things, and Tellus Engineering and Fred C. Cox Architects, just to name a few of, aside from, everyone in the community going through these plans. And so it's been a long road, over a year. And, but the city, employees and the city staff have been great to work with. There's been good back and forth. When they had a concern or a question, we've had to address it. And we've been doing this at least 4 or 5 iterations since we originally proposed. And one thing I requested from them from the very beginning, because I know, the heated nature of this development, was that we be treated fairly and equitably. And if, that we're, following the rules. We're not trying to pull anything over anybody's eyes. It's been repeatedly posted on Facebook and many of the different emails that have been sent into city council that we've reviewed, that everybody's been hoodwinked, and that certain people, have had the wool pull over their eyes. And, I think that's inappropriate. We weren't involved whatsoever in the rezone of this property. We'd never laid eyes on this property before, a few months before we purchased it. We're totally unassociated with Lori Gale or whoever did the zoning. Had nothing to do with us. It's been insinuated repeatedly that we're somehow in cahoots with the city government, and some sort of corrupt intent has been done in here. But it's not. We had nothing to do with the rezone. So we acquired the property years after the property was rezoned, and so at that time it was all fully entitled with the zoning in place. And so, with that being said, we're here now, and we've got this, I think a development that's really going to benefit the city financially, and bring in some young families who love to live in the city. And it's a great city. And so, there's people that would love to move back and live in this city and can't find an affordable place. And this is not affordable housing. So these are condominiums for sale, for owner occupancy. Not for affordable housing in any way. But as you probably read the memos that were distributed to you, both the city engineer and the city planner have recommended that this project be approved. And we fully agree. I guess I can go through and address some of the concerns real quickly of some of the people who have commented. So just from, so Michael Grant had concern with parking. And he referenced the parking protest that was had last year sometime. But the parking has all been agreed to in the development agreement. And so it's really a moot point. We followed the parking according to the zone, and it's been signed off by the city planner and the city engineer. He had problems with Lori Gale's statements during the rezone, which we weren't involved with. We had nothing to do with. And presumably the city council and the planning commission were all fully informed. at the time that the zone was redone. I'm not sure with the aqueduct. I don't think it impacts our property at all. Sewer capacity is based upon the city's estimates, and we're paying sewer impact fees to make that happen. So Paul Stern, he was concerned with the many weeks, the shortage of days that they had to review the documents, but these documents have been in the city for several weeks now. Tammy accused one of our associates of committing a felony, and I think that's inappropriate. And we don't have a lift station, Tammy's other concern. Let's see, Julie Losi had concern with the survey. So I can address that. The survey that we have can and should be recorded. I'm not sure why it hasn't been filed with the county. That's not an issue. We have a survey that is fully recordable and we can file it tomorrow. It's not an issue. The legal descriptions, that are on the deed that when we purchased the property, I think they totaled up to the large parcel was 2.74 acres, and then the smaller parcel was let me pull it there and see. The smaller parcel across the canal is 0.26 acres. But when surveyed, the large parcel is actually 2.914 acres. So we originally had proposed 76 condominiums on this property, and after discussion with city council, it was discovered that the little parcel across the canal is not zoned in the CO for the CO zone. So actually the city, had a win there. They successfully reduced the number of condominiums down from 76 to 72 because the large contiguous parcel is only 2.914 acres. And so, and this is the survey. You can see it right here. And we could record it tomorrow, and we will. So that's not a real big deal, because what is this 2.14 acres times 25 units? It comes out to be 72.85 units. Rounding down is 72 units. And so, so that's with the survey that Ms. Losi had concerns on. The parking has been already agreed on in the development agreement. There's a lot of misinformation, I think, on the parking. We have 2 units of parking for every single residential unit, and everybody's confused because there's one that's assigned during the day, but they have 2 all night. So during those, everybody has one continually, and there's shared parking with the commercial space. So there are 144 total residential parking stalls, and then I think there's 164 total stalls. And Fred, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but then under the commercial, there's 54 required stalls. And so we have an extra, there's about 34 stalls that would be shared between the commercial and the residential units during the daytime hours. So, but that's all been associated with, it's all been defined already in the development agreement. So Jeff Benning had concern that this was approved under false pretenses and false statements. And like I said, we haven't been involved in that. As far as the detention, I'll let our civil engineer Leland address the detention problem, the concern that Mr. Benning had with the storm tech here in a minute. But he had a problem with people parking in front of his house. But like I said, we have enough parking in our development. So Ms. Ms. Johnson had a concern about denying variances. So let me just address the issue with the variance. The variance process, as you know, is part of the code, is part of the development code. There's issues with every development that ever gets built, and not every piece of land fits perfectly in, or every building, or every setback, or every street configuration, or every sewer configuration fits in perfectly with the letter of the law that is written on the paper. Everyone believes that you can write a document and everything's going to fit like a cookie cutter into the document, but it never works out that way in real life. We're not trying to change the code for the use. We're changing basically what is simply a landscaping issue, really. What the code right now, what the zoning requires right now is a separation wall on the property line. So a masonry wall that's 6 feet tall on the property line. We already have a retaining wall that's masonry as well. It's over 6 feet tall, and it performs the same function. It divides, basically, the masonry wall is, the purpose of it is to create a buffer between a commercial zone and a residential zone. You don't want, commercial use spilling over into someone's backyard and, disturbing the neighbors when they're out barbecuing or playing catch in the backyard or with their dog or whatever. So our retaining wall is 18 feet from the property, and we would propose using that as our buffer wall and putting landscaping in between the property line and the retaining wall. So instead of having a stark blank buffer wall right on the property line, and the neighbor, all he's seeing is this giant stone wall, we're stepping back 18 feet and putting landscaping in between the neighbor's house and our retaining wall. And so when people say we're trying to get away with not following the code, really it's a benefit to the neighbor to have bushes, shrubs, vines, whatever, to break up this large, retaining wall. And so that's really the only, I think, reading the memos and having attended all these meetings with city staff, I think that's really the only issue that they've really come across as far as, meeting or not meeting the letter of the law, so to speak. And so let's see, with regards to the variance. So, and that buffer zone is only for us. We have two residential properties that buffer our property. The rest on two sides, you've got the canal, and on a third side, you've got two residential lots. One that's got probably 70 or 80 feet of frontage of buffer or next to our property, and another one that has about 10 or 15 feet. So we have two residential lots that buffer our southern end, and on the other side, we've got the frontage road / Highway 89. So there's only two residential neighbors that are abutting our property, that are adjacent to our property. And so along there, we would have a buffer of landscaping leading up to our masonry wall, essentially. And that's the one, I think, exception that that city staff has identified as being not exactly, but we think it works better that way anyway. You know what I mean? So the alternative, let me just, I can do this with my hands, but let's say the alternative is we have the masonry wall just as the code says, right on the property line. Okay. So imagine this, you got your property line here with a 6-foot masonry wall. Okay. You step back 18 feet and you've got a retention wall right here. And inside those two areas, you've got basically a no man's land, which is ripe for garbage, trash, illicit activity, kids sneaking around back there at night. There really is no point in having this void, a canyon between our retaining wall and 60 or 70 feet of masonry wall. So it doesn't make any sense to deny the property, which is because it has this. It's not a use variance. It's a very minor landscaping, essentially, variance that we'd use our retaining wall as the masonry wall and landscape up to it. So I went through and read a lot of the comments that were submitted to the Planning Commission tonight. And so we've covered the variance issue, which is really just the retaining wall and the landscaping from the property line. The parking has been through planning commission and city council and was agreed on the development agreement. The green space, we've got, I think the code is 10 or 15%, and we have like 24% green space landscaping. You know, we've been through, I'm sure you've read some of the memos from the fire department and from the city engineer and the city planner. They all recommend approval. The survey, you know, we can get that recorded. It's not an issue. The survey is what governs, and we've had 2 different traffic studies. I think that's has satisfied the city staff's questions that they might have had. And I think, Leland, do you have a second? You can address the detention pond, the underground detention. Are you there, Leland?
Yes, just let me say that the detention pond, the underground portion, we will put in a plastic liner to prevent it from seeping into the neighbor's basement. This is an important issue. He was concerned about the overflow from the pond possibly going into his house. It's been designed so that it goes out to the street rather than to his house.
That's the overflow, right?
Yeah, the overflow. I'm sitting here thinking that potentially the sides of the pond, as on his side, could be also an area where it may seep, and perhaps a clay liner or a plastic liner on that side would also be a good idea, just for that. And also to address Mr. Edding's other comment about the light. That light that's shown there on that side is not proposed. It's the existing utility pole with the street light on it.
So Leland, we're not relying upon seepage for this detention. Is that correct?
We want to prevent it.
Okay.
So it's by evaporation, is that right?
No, it's just water moving through the soil into his basement from the pond. That's what we want to prevent.
So it holds the water for a period of time with a smaller orifice until it can rush out at a slower pace. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's the detention. We're holding the water to prevent it from flooding pipes downstream. It will all leave eventually.
It'll all leave eventually?
Yeah, depending on how long the storm lasts, but generally within a couple to 6 hours after the storm, it's empty, depending on how severe the storm.
Joseph?
I do have a comment on a lot of the comments, the written comments that were submitted to the commission beforehand dealt with the aesthetics, and I think it's in the general plan that this area is supposed to have earth tones, quote unquote, you know, whether it's tans or browns or whatever. And we had submitted several, I guess, elevations that had each section of the property divided up into different colors. And then it was emailed to us that, you know, it really requires earth tones in this area. And so one of the things that, you know, so that we submitted this elevation with these tans, and in my opinion, the tans are dated. You know, you look at a tan building and it looks like it's from 1993. And so, you know, I've been to the White Cliffs of Dover, you know, and been to Normandy, but you've got these, you know, whites. I think white's really popular right now. So that's the one thing, you know, as far as improving the aesthetics of this building, that's something I would propose. I don't know if white is in the Planning Commission's, you know, definition book as being earth tones or whatever, but that is one thing that, you know, and I think Miss Johnson mentioned maybe bringing some of the texture around to the back of the buildings to make them more attractive in the back. And that's something I think we could work on as well. It's not a bad idea. So that's kind of, you know, some of my input on as far as the aesthetics go. I believe Barry Burton, the city planner, went through each and every single item in the architectural review, just to make sure, you know, that those things were satisfied. And I'm sure you reviewed those, but those are some ideas I had. If I would like not to make it look like it was built in 1993, but built today. So if we could maybe lighten the color up, because you see a lot of these new houses, they're white and with different accents and sort of thing. So that's something I'd love to do. We didn't think we could though. So anyway, those are, I think, Henry, am I missing anything? But I think those are the comments that I had.
Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Fred Cox, I'm an architect.
There's Fred, okay.
There are a couple of things that were just mentioned, that the lighting, we had a couple of different lighting studies so that the lights within the development would not spill out into the neighbors. They were concerned that we were doing that. The city has been pretty careful on making sure of that. That was one of the things that was mentioned. We do have stairs and elevators to that back building that would have stone on it, and obviously we can work with that. Certainly, we've got a couple of different colors shown on the colored elevations, and we can certainly make them lighter, darker. We originally had reds and blues, and we're told that they need to be earth tone, so we went earth tone. But we're certainly the materials that we've called out are available in other colors, and if we have a little bit more flexibility, we can use a little bit more variance there. As far as that detention pond as opposed to a retention, it's like a big shock absorber. So you already have a certain amount of storm drain capacity. Our goal is to fix it so that if you get a really, really, really heavy rainstorm, that it doesn't flood. It acts like a shock absorber, and then it outflows in a controlled manner based on what the city told us that they could handle. And so that's the purpose of that pond. And so it would be typically a short period of time. Leland mentioned like 6 hours or whatever. And the city required calculations for that. But yeah, if we've got some liners, and if we need to add some additional liners, the intention was not to provide any groundwater problems to the neighbors, and we can certainly look at that.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. I understand Jeff Eddings' concerns. I mean, I'm not sure you're aware that they just relined the canal just for, to keep it inside, the water inside the canal. And so he has a legitimate concern there for sure. Mr. Cook, anybody else from your team you want to ask questions, present, or anything like that?
Oh, sorry, Henry or Leland, do you have any other comments? I think I tried to, you can see I went through everybody's comments today from all the written comments that were had from the citizens, and just made comments and trying to make sure that we address every one of them. I think a lot of them have, I think all of them have been addressed. And so, but if you have any questions, or Henry, you have any comments, or Leland?
No, I think we've addressed every major issue that the constituents had. Those 15 or so constituents, we did try to design something that was appropriate for the city and quality. And the city certainly stayed on top of us to make sure we lived up to every code. So we've been bending ourselves over backwards. And I don't appreciate any negative comments towards the board or my team, because we never did anything that was inappropriate. Other than that, there's not much to say. We've met code and we've tried to do the best job we could.
Great.
Can I comment? What Joseph was talking about with the variance, if you go to page 467 of the packet, that shows the landscape plan, and it will have to get a visual of where that retaining wall is on the south side versus the tree plantings and all of that between there and the property line of the two homes adjacent. And if you're following along on YouTube and you're able to see that, that will make more sense. The variance application is on page 472, and it more or less says, we'd like to do this instead of meeting the code exactly, which is the masonry wall on the property line as well.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Because what I'd like to do next is we'll go to Barry, our city planner. We'll go over his letter, and then we'll see how we get from there, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is that okay with you, Barry?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
You're at the beginning, so I guess the best place to start, right?
Okay, let me get to my. All right. So I kind of broke down my review into a couple of different sections. One was zoning compliance, and I don't want to go through every section of this. Just suffice it to say that I think that all of these various areas, they are in compliance. If you have any questions on any of them, please let me know. Some of these things are kind of subjective, you know, it's not clear, particularly when it comes to some of the special provisions that are listed in section 10, 5, and 11 of the code, which they're all very subjective, but it talks about, you know, whether or not the building incorporates arcades and roofs and alcoves and porticos and that sort of thing. And there are, whether there's enough, you know, to meet what you feel would be appropriate is maybe a matter of discussion, but there are balconies on each floor above each street side entry that provide a shelter and kind of help break the building up. The building has kind of jogs in it that are, I don't know what they were, about every 25 feet apart or so. So it's not just a solid face across the front. It kind of has a level of interest there. It talks about trash storage areas and equipment, transformers, meters, and that sort of thing. We don't have a lot of information on those. We've not been, there are dumpster locations shown on the site. As far as air conditioners and that kind of thing, we haven't seen anything on that yet. I would imagine most of that equipment's on the roof, but we don't know that for sure. There isn't really a lot of room on the site to put them down, you know, on the ground anywhere. So we'll take another look at that. I think when with the final approval, we'll want a little more detail on that. It says that there's no outside storage. Let's see, there shall be no outside storage of materials and equipment or other motor vehicles. There's no outside storage shown on this plan whatsoever. There's no outdoor dining or seating or signage areas that can be, that we're dealing with. There is a sign, relatively small sign that's shown on the plans. There's no outdoor seating related to any of the commercial uses. Primary building orientation shall be toward the street. Well, we have 3 buildings that are oriented toward the street, and that takes up pretty much the whole street frontage. Those buildings are, there was one comment that they were right up on the sidewalk, and that's not correct. They are 10 feet back from the sidewalk, which is the maximum setback that was allowed in the CO zone. Interestingly enough, normally we have a minimum setback. In the CO zone, there was a maximum setback, and they are right at that 10-foot maximum setback. Let's see. All of the commercial space is within 30 feet of the street as required by the code, which is, as I mentioned, they're actually within 10 feet of the street, so it meets that section. It says buildings shall incorporate exterior lighting, changes in mass, surface, or finish, giving emphasis. Each commercial unit has a light and a significant amount of glass that kind of emphasizes that, or that it's a different use than the residential use. Buildings shall provide a clear visual division between all floors, and the top floor of any building shall contain a distinctive finish consisting of a roof with cornice or other architectural termination. These buildings have, the bottom commercial areas are distinguished by the materials from the residential floors. Residential floors are distinguished via the balconies and the window placement in those. To me, it appears to be, like I said, these are subjective. To me, it appears that this plan meets that. I'm not saying it couldn't be done better, but it does meet that provision. There are cornices that provide interest in a varied roof height also. It says the facade of every residential floor greater than 30 lineal feet with street frontage shall incorporate features designed to provide human scale and visual interest. Compliance can be achieved through balconies, alcoves, or wall segments that create at least a 2-foot variation. Well, in these buildings, there are regular jogs in the exterior wall that break up the facade into segments that are smaller than 30 feet. And then, as I mentioned, there are balconies that add human scale and interest to the residential units. Talks about paseos and courtyards, but there are no paseos, courtyards, or plazas in this design, this plan. All new utility transmission lines will be underground where feasible and behind structures to minimize the impact. There are no new utility lines, transmission lines, and all the service lines interior are underground. Ground floor requirements, at least 75% of the linear frontage of any ground floor, non-residential wall or street frontage shall incorporate windows, doors, or displays. Ground floor retail windows must remain free of signs and must not be tinted. We have a little over 75%, more than 70%, 75% of the linear frontage of the ground floor commercial space incorporates windows. We don't know about tinting or signs at this point. I think signs are probably going to be an enforcement issue that's ongoing. It's pretty easy to put a paper sign up in a window and tape it up there. So if our regulations say they can't have that, that's going to be an enforcement issue. That's not really something we can deal with at this point. Let's see, it says multi-story buildings shall have first floors with a minimum ceiling height of 12 feet. And these first floors do have a ceiling height of 12 feet. Sound transmission classification of commercial space will be determined when the building permit applications are received. So there's a provision that says you're gonna separate the commercial from the residential so that they're not impacting each other. That's something that we just have to deal with at building permit phase. We don't see those kind of details at this stage. let's see, it says accessory living quarters, where accessory living quarters are provided as permitted herein, no window shall be permitted in any wall of the same which is located within 8 feet of a side property line. There are no residential unit windows within 8 feet of any property line on this project. We talked landscaping requirements. It requires at least 15%. There are 24% of the site has been landscaped. We've talked a little bit, Joseph talked about the buffer yard and the request for a variance regarding that buffer yard. To me, adding a 6-foot masonry wall on the property line would accomplish absolutely nothing. And in fact, it might be detrimental, kind of creating, as was mentioned, kind of a canyon there that no one really has access to and might attract unwanted activity. By landscaping that area and allowing the retaining wall to act as the separation wall, I think you'll have a much better effect, and it accomplishes the intent of the buffer yard. That's the only variance that they're asking for at this time. The buffer yard is supposed to be 20 feet. Well, they've got 18 feet from 20 feet of planting space. They've got 18 feet of planter below the retaining wall and an additional 2.5 feet at the top of the wall before you get to the parking spaces, the parking lot. So total of 20.5 feet of planting on that edge, or that side of the property. It seems to me that this fulfills the intent of the buffer yard. It requires street trees along the park strips. Those have been included. Then we get to the conditional use section of our code. I did not try and list every requirement of the conditional use section. Many of those are very generic in nature. And I did mention where you can find them. I believe those generic requirements have been met. The one thing that was kind of a question and that might come up is the parking. It says in 10-7-3D5, parking facilities shall be effectively screened from adjacent residential properties. In this case, those adjacent residential properties where there's parking close, they have both the retaining wall, or the parking will be up higher than the adjacent property. And then there's a 42-inch fence on top of the retaining wall. So you're kind of looking from down in those yards, you'd be looking up at the wall and up, then a 42-inch fence on top of that. You won't be able to see any of the cars at all. So I believe the screening requirement has been met there. As I said, there's a lot of special requirements and conditions that are kind of general in nature in section 10-7-10. I believe they have been met. I hope you've had a chance to look through those and make that determination yourselves. The daycare center that's being proposed in there is a conditional use in the CO zone. So we have, we're not approving the daycare center at this time. The intended use of that building 1, the commercial space in building 1, is to house a daycare center, all of it, all of the commercial space. So we have reviewed the proposal with that in mind, giving consideration to impacts and needs of the daycare center. But once this building is built and a daycare wants to come in, they'll have to come in and apply for their own conditional use permit prior to opening the center. Other potential uses in the commercial space may or may not require conditional use approvals. We don't know what they are at this time. If they're listed as permitted uses, then they would just be able to go in and get their building or get their business license, go in and occupy the space. If they are listed as conditional use in that CO zone, they'd have to go through that same The only issue I had with the project plans was, you know, this project is phased. There are a number of buildings. There's 4 buildings. Originally there were 5, but well, I guess originally there were 4, and then there were 5, and now we're back to 4 in this latest plan. So there's phasing. Those won't all be built at the same time. The phasing that they're showing includes phasing of the utilities and phasing of the parking that goes with it. It doesn't show any kind of phasing on the landscaping, and that was just my concern. I think we need to just make sure that each phase, the landscaping that's associated with that phase, should go in, you know, with the phase. And the landscaping of the detention basin should be done as part of phase 1, because the detention basin is going to have to go in with phase 1. So in the end, I'm recommending that the Planning Commission grant preliminary approval, and that they do so with the developers being required, as with a condition that developers be required to landscape the detention basin as part of, and that's north of the canal as part of phase 1, and landscape installation proceed in conjunction with each phase. That's pretty much it. Do you have any questions of me, Planning Commission?
Barry, I've got a couple.
Shoot 'em at us.
All right, so can you help me understand special provisions that you mentioned in PL9 in reference to the CO zone? So
Yeah. Are you saying, you wondering where those are found exactly, or?
no,
what?
no. Just the intent of a special provision.
Well,
Like,
the CO zone was established as something that was very different from any other zone that we had in the community. And I think those provisions were established as part of that zone so that to address kind of the uniqueness of what was allowed in that zone.
so I understand the limitations within the section. Oh, sorry, Barry. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little, but I can follow you.
Okay, sorry. So I understand the limitations. I just don't understand, are the special provisions something that we're asking the developer to accommodate, or something that we need to enforce? Like,
they're provisions of code, and they have to follow those provisions. There's some I guess determination, some leeway on your part as to whether or not they meet those provisions. I've given you my recommendation and my observations on those,
sure.
But they're subjective in nature, and I think each of you Planning Commission members has to decide for yourself if they meet those provisions.
Okay. The other question that I had for you is the zoning compliance for parking in a CEO zone. Those are defined within the zone itself, right?
Yeah, well, the parking provisions are, it just says you've got to meet the requirements of our parking chapter. I think it's chapter 9 in our code.
Okay, so it's actually chapter 8.
But then we went through a process of I'm sorry, you broke up again. I didn't catch that last part.
Oh, just that it's chapter 8.
Yeah, okay. So chapter 8 requires that there are 2 parking spaces for each dwelling unit, and then it requires a certain number of spaces for all the commercial space, depending on what kind of commercial goes in there. So we had some early negotiations on parking. That was one of the first things that we addressed in this, was how to deal with that parking, because this is a mixed use development, and there was an opportunity here, I guess, or the possibility, I should say, of having shared parking where people using the commercial space or patrons of the commercial space during the day would have use of some of that parking. And then in the evening, when those businesses are closed, and in the development agreement, there are time limits on when those businesses can be open for this very reason, so that the parking spaces that they require are open in the evening hours through the night for the residents to use, and vice versa in the daytime when residents are off working, that those spaces are available for commercial patrons. Now, this all started long before COVID came about, and we had so many people working from home. I don't know how to address that right now. COVID's obviously not going to be around forever. At least I certainly hope not. And sooner or later, we'll get back to more normal operations. I don't know what you do about that in the meantime, whether there's something you want to do. But anyway, those negotiations went on. We went back and forth quite a bit about how much could be shared and how much couldn't. And that was eventually established in the development agreement. So the 164 spaces is kind of a set figure because it's already been approved by the city council via the development agreement.
So I would assume then that in 164 spaces, that 164 spaces would be available 12 months of the year, meaning you got a snow factor, right? You can't push snow into one of those spaces because 164 spaces must be available all year long. And if not, what are you going to do with the snow?
That's a good question. I think that's something maybe the developers ought to answer.
I think if you look at the drawing, there's quite a bit of space all along the canal in the back to push snow. There's quite a bit of, anyway, we're not going to be pushing it into parking stalls, but there are quite a few areas to deposit snow.
So before we get too far away from this, can I just finish my thought on the number of parking spaces as it relates to the zone?
Sure.
I'm just reading within, this is section 10-8-5, number of parking spaces. And within the residential component to this, it says 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, plus 1 additional space per 3 units for 3 to 6 unit dwellings. So where does that put us, Barry? I don't quite understand everything that happens after the 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, that sentence.
Well, you just take the number of units, divide by, was it 3? I can't remember. We went through these calculations. It was a long time ago.
So you told me that each dwelling unit has 2 parking spaces, right?
That is the requirement of the parking chapter 8. That's the requirement. Yes.
Okay.
Plus,
so what I'm asking explanation on is within our code, it says plus 1 additional space per 3 units.
Yeah.
For 3 to 6 unit dwellings.
Yes.
So is that nullified because we're just saying that it's for 3 to 6 unit dwellings? Or why are we not requiring that additional parking place?
Well, they are there. I mean, 74 times 2 is what, that's 100 and...
No, I get that math. I get that math. What I'm not understanding is our code. So it says, you get those 2.
Yeah. I don't know. That's probably something that needs to be fixed in the code because, yeah, these units are bigger than 6 unit dwellings. I think when that was put in the code, the time 6 units per building was the maximum we allowed. And it's one of those things that we made a change to the code and failed to look at every impact of that change.
Why should we change the code? I think we ought to stick with the code as it is.
Well,
I guess I'm looking
That's
for
a
an
different
explanation.
discussion.
That's
What
another
I'm asking
discussion,
for
right?
is an explanation as to why we don't have, or what was excluded out of the calculation for this.
What was
part of the
excluded was, I guess you could say, the number of spaces that we would require for the commercial space that's there would have pushed this much higher, the number of parking spaces much higher if you did not have any shared parking. It would be, 2 spaces per dwelling unit plus the 1 additional for each 3 units. If you wanted to apply that, I guess there's a question on that.
Okay.
Plus, then we'd look at each commercial use and determine how many spaces is required for that. It would have been a lot more spaces if we did not consider the possibility of shared parking.
So my concern with the parking is the reality we have with COVID now. I mean, there is going to be a new normal, but lots of businesses are changing the way they work, and a lot more people are going to be working from home. So, I know it's hard to anticipate and guess what that will be, but the residents are the ones who are going to have to live with the consequences of that, with people, either residents or people who visit these commercial areas not having a place to park because, both parking spots are being used 24/7. So that's my concern. I understand there was a development agreement, but the world has changed dramatically since then.
Can I add in on that also? I think the developer with their plan gave us a great example of the type of parking that could come to play. So I read through, just looking at the plans, possibly a daycare. Well, that daycare is going to accommodate 150, I think it's 154 students would be accommodated by that daycare as proposed. So to me, it's like, hey, we have an issue here. The traffic we need to be thinking about for 154 students or children that are being dropped off, big deal. When I read the development agreement, I understand we are bound by that, but as far as parking goes, if I read that specifically, it says there shall be at least 164 parking spaces. Okay, at least. I think we're going to need more than 164, just looking at possible uses of this commercial. I know that we are hard fast with, of these spaces, there shall be 1 space dedicated solely for residential units. So, and we can't get around that. But I do think we've got a lot of traffic possibility with this commercial and potentially a daycare or some other use that we need to take into account as far as how many parking stalls, and not just parking, just the movement of traffic. I just want to make sure that we're looking at that.
Tim,
Close.
if I can piggyback on that, with the what they've got laid out for the daycare, I was looking at the state rule 381-100-10, ratios and group size. What they have for the daycare there, they would have to have a minimum of 18 adults supervising those children, plus
Right.
others. So you're gonna have to
Yeah.
have another 18 dedicated slots there.
Yeah.
And as somebody pointed out, the 2,700 square foot of commercial requires 54 parking stalls. So that takes us up to 220 parking stalls that need to be dedicated for that complex.
And then and along the same lines, Wes, my other thought is I look at what we have happening with the charter school and when they have drop off and pick up, and that is the amount of traffic is
That's the question I have is, where are they going to do the drop off? Out front?
Right.
Yeah, you
There's
take
no-
a family with 2 kids, trying to get them out of the car and into the daycare on 2700 East.
Can we address
It's a disaster waiting to happen?
Can we address that question? Fred, can you address that? Because We've conducted two traffic analysis.
Traffic analysis only went to
Okay, but I want this-
2017. They did not look to the future use of 2700 or Deer Run. They need to look into the future of what the future potential for traffic on that road is, and it's going to be much more than your quote from 2017.
Traffic study was conducted in 2017.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know what?
everything in the traffic study ends at 2017. There's nothing that goes beyond 2017.
We just conducted it last year and actually this year.
It's not in their traffic study.
Well, and let me help you out there just a second, Joe. Just with the frontage road can handle a lot of traffic. What it can't handle is a lot of traffic slowing down or, trying to turn into this development. That's the issue. I mean, there's no parking that's allowed on the frontage road. It's all, but I'm worried more about the flow of traffic of the people that are getting in to the site and out of the site and how they do that safely.
And that's exactly what's addressed in the traffic study is the turning and the number of cars that would be potentially turning right or left out of both entrances.
And I didn't see anything that talked about the volumes with 154 students or children and 20 employees.
There's nothing in the study on that at all.
May I make
Brandon.
a comment? I know it's not public comment, but you're asking about parking and childcare. This particular childcare center, and I've done more than one of their designs, they have check-in. So when a kid is not just dropped off at the curb or whatever, they're basically taken in, they're signed in, and then when they're ready to leave, they come in and sign them out. Because obviously the kids are more important than about anything else. So they're literally signed in and out. And the other locations that they have, they do not have we've done studies in Saratoga Springs and other locations. And that was the intent. Is one of the reasons that we put the hours is to make sure that the parking would be available for the childcare. And we can show those additional studies as part of a conditional use approval for a childcare center, but we took into account the number of spaces that they would need. And you're correct, they would need probably 20 staff. The one in West Jordan that I went to just recently, that's what they have is 20 staff members. But you look out in the parking lot, there's not 20 cars there because some of those individuals ride buses and other or carpool or whatever. But yeah, there is a certain amount of turnover, but people are coming in and they're signing in their kid and they're signing off the kid. Unlike a different type of school where parents just drop kids off. This is a little bit more controlled as far as hours and timing, and they've been in several different locations and haven't had any trouble. And
I've got two grandsons that go to a daycare facility, and it is what you say. They are signed in and signed out. Also, the parking is off street, and it's available. There's no housing apartment or condos around that area, so it's much safer in that situation than what this situation shows here. Also, I'm concerned about your hours of operation, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Well, hang on, Wes. And I think you bring up a good point, but I want to get through the parking thing first, if that's okay.
Yeah, there's insufficient parking right now. The way it's drawn up, there's insufficient parking, period.
I agree. I mean, is it Tim who said there's 150 families or 50 kids now?
154 children are planned for that unit, for those daycare.
So am I to understand, given the benefit of the doubt, there'll be 100 cars going in there twice a day to drop off kids and go inside, get registered and come back out?
That's a possibility.
Can I comment here? If you go to page 86 of the packet, it shows the trip generation. It shows that they're planning on 121 trips in and 121 trips out every day for the daycare.
I can't.
So
Somebody
you're,
repeat
you're
that.
very close. If you go to page 85, where we were talking about historic growth and that there was nothing past 2017, it also shows that what they were getting at is that there's a 3.7% growth per year, and then it projects that out to 2030, and 20 years from now. And it says that we have to multiply the existing traffic on 2,700 by a factor of 2.14, and that's what this study has done.
I'm
Compared
getting
to Highmark, it's much worse.
Somebody could repeat what Leland's indicating.
Leland, your microphone is a little
Muted.
It's got some distortion. Can you repeat what you just said?
Okay, so historic growth or the 122 trips a day for daycare?
Distorted.
So the historic growth has been 3.7%. That's what page 85 of the packet says. And factoring that out over the next 20 years, it's a multiplication of 2.14 times the traffic that we currently have. So when you go to pages 83 and 84, which are counting the turns in and out, those are the numbers that it's operating on is 20 years from now.
So to reiterate, the parking, the traffic study accounts for the daycare as planned, and it projects out 20 years from now.
The daycare as planned, the condo units as planned, but then 2,700 is 20 years from now. Those are the numbers they're using. So we're assuming that once this is built, that's not going to change for the next 20 years, but traffic will continue to increase on 2,700 East.
So what other types of businesses are planned for this development? I mean, the daycare is just one thing. What else do you have in mind? Because depending on the types of businesses, you're going to be getting a lot more people at certain times of the day.
The development agreement specifically has the hours so that whatever is allowed in the zone, either conditional or permitted, would still be limited within those hours. So you're not going to get a business that wants 9 o'clock, wants to be open at 9 o'clock. That was one of the reasons staff put in there. The ratios that Barry required us to meet as far as shared parking was more stringent than I'd seen any place else in the state. But he was trying to be conservative. And so we did everything we could to meet those requirements.
Barry, quick question. What's the hours for Burley Burger for their evening? What time do they close?
I think that's not a fair question for Barry.
Yeah, I don't know the answer
Well,
to that.
it's much later than 6 o'clock.
That's right.
The development agreement, though, the development agreement establishes what the hours, the maximum hours can be for those businesses, whatever they are.
Okay, so I'm a little bit sensitive to drop off and pick up of kids, and many of you know why. And down at the school, we tried so hard, the charter school, to get that right. And we went to other charter schools, looked at other parking lots, and we still missed it, right?
Still not doing it right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so I'm just telling you, this development does not have the parking capacity with the residential units to make this work at all. And I know it's 164, but it can't be 164. It's just not going to work.
Well, and it does say at least 164, but that's not my only concern though, parking, but it's just the flow.
I agree, the flow.
Yeah, there needs to be, accommodate
I think our flow pattern, it goes in.
Excuse me 1 second, Joseph.
I'm sorry.
Talk about the flow, maybe the entrances, it shows on the plans it's 26 feet wide. Maybe they need to be wider, 36. And
that's
again,
not out of the question.
turn
Maybe they
lanes,
need to be spaced differently
deceleration,
from
getting in
2700.
and out of that parking lot is a concern to me.
I agree with Tim. And we as a planning commission, when we do commercial development, we require 36 feet and each entrance. And this is simply a commercial development. And that will be one of the things I think as the planning commission, we need to really look at. Because of the flow, I think that's one good reason. But you're right, Tim. You're right on the money.
Well, and I think another point is this is called, and it got approved as a commercial overlay. Hence the word is commercial. And that should be our focus if that's really what we're trying to represent. Now, if the developer wants a residential development, then I think maybe they need to apply for a residential zone and let's look at it that way. But otherwise, we're going to focus on this commercial aspect and as far as traffic and the flow there, not as much on the residential, because that's what we have to honor because of this development agreement and the already rezoned commercial overlay. So
I think we've accounted for the traffic flow, have we not, Fred and Leland, as far as ingress on the northern entrance and out egress on the southern entrance? We originally had a single entrance for this development, and we incorporated a second entrance to improve the flow. And we've had 2 traffic studies that were evaluated this, and both times he said that it would make no impact as to the improvement of the flow to add a turn lane or add and that sort of thing to our design. Fred or Leland, do you have any comments on that?
I do. Going back to the traffic study, pages 83 and 84 are a sketch of the movements in and out. Now, the reason for a 36-foot wide access are so that you can get 12 feet for a access in and another 12 feet for a left out and a right out. Here our peak hour volumes show that we have a 76 cars going left out in your peak hour and 1 car going right out in your peak hour for AM. And then for PM, it's 40 left and 1 right per hour. So the point being is we would not necessarily need to have a left out and a right out to accommodate the 1 car that's going the different direction than all the rest.
But I appreciate what you're saying, but our precedent in the city is 36 feet for commercial. And that's what we want to keep. I mean, that's just what it's got to be.
So, Rob, I'm sorry, Rob. I just have a quick clarification. I think the point that we're trying to bring up here is not the traffic flows going out of the development. It's what happens within the development. So if I'm understanding the comment that was made that ingress will happen on the north entrance, how does that flow once you're on the site? Because are they going to make a loop around building D, or is it you park and then pull back out? Like that's the piece that I'm not seeing, and I need clarification on.
There's nothing indicated on any of the plans about a traffic flow within the complex.
Correct.
I want to get back to the ingress of the property, because if it's daycare and the daycare is coming from residences within the city, particularly in the Deer Run area, it'd be more than 1 during peak flow, making a right. I'm sorry, I have to disagree with the study. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm pretty firm on that.
Yeah, I got nothing there. I'm not the traffic engineer, but
Okay.
As for the question of the flow, page 435 has the site plan and the entrances and everything, if you're following along. It basically, you would come in on the south entrance, go clockwise around the parking and leave out the north entrance. And then there are some parking stalls opposite the daycare building, kind of on an angle. And those ones would be your drop off and pickup spots to go in and sign in and sign out.
Okay.
So the other comment to look
going clockwise.
Yeah. The layout that we're showing now, if you look at the 26-foot high, the 26-foot accesses, both of those were part of the development agreement. You can look at the diagram that was shown, that was signed off by the Planning Commission and City Council last year. They show, when we looked at possibly having one access or two, and we were specifically asked by staff to provide two 26-footers. That was what was agreed last year. So while it is possible for another development for you guys to all of a sudden come back and say, we want a wider access or something, go back and look at the layout, the agreement that was signed last year, and you will see those two same 26-foot accesses. And we spent months negotiating those with staff before even going to the Planning Commission and City Council. And then we've spent over a year trying to solve staff's concerns and that they have brought up since then. And so one of the things that staff specifically asked us to was to go back to the traffic engineer and ask whether or not it would make any difference for this type of development. And you've still got a number of people, you're worried about residents, but most of those residents are going to be heading towards the freeway. And again, if this was a different, you're going to have another shot at the parking ratio as far as childcare with a conditional use. We can bring you some more information on that. But the development, as proposed, we went through all of those requirements as far as your zoning, et cetera, to meet staff's requirements. Barry, Brandon, fire department, et cetera, including Appendix D, which legally could be challenged. The legislature's looking at solving that, but that's another issue.
Exhibit B clearly shows two 26-foot entrances is what Fred's saying.
I appreciate what you're saying. And you've asked staff, you asked the fire department, you asked, I don't know who else you've asked, but the law and the way it's written in our code is you have to ask the planning commission.
Yeah.
And the
Which we did.
Yeah, we did. That happened. That already happened.
I've seen that document. I have to see that document, and I haven't seen it.
If
This body of this planning commission, and you're bringing this development at this time to this planning commission, and this planning commission saying it's going to be 36.
Bob,
Brandon.
The development information provided by Brandon, it says on page 5, action needed, paragraph 5, 10-8-2C1 access. The development is providing two entrances that are 26 feet in width. However, the commercial zones, the planning commission may require the said driveway to be 36 feet in width. That's from Brandon.
I realize that. All I'm saying is that the development agreement trumps it. And you already approved the two 26-foot ones last year, and I can give you the page number in your packet if you want it.
So Rob, can I jump in here?
Sure.
What I wanted to just state here is, I guess I just have to respectfully disagree with Fred in that his interpretation is that everything written on the drawing in Exhibit B is written in stone. I did not see it that way. The 26-foot wide entrances, even though they're dimensioned on there, I don't think that trumps the Planning Commission's ability in the code to require something different. And that's simply all I was stating in my memo. That's more of a legal question. If you look in the development agreement, let's see, section, if I can get back to it. I think it's section 2. It just talks about the city laws and purposes, and that this development agreement is not trumping anything other than the things that are specifically stated. Now, Jamie's on here, and it's probably more appropriate for him to give a legal interpretation, but my understanding is that the Exhibit B was included to show, and it is specifically in paragraph number 3, it talks about substantial compliance with Exhibit B. So, for example, Exhibit B shows it shows 4 buildings, 1 building right at the front, all connected, a separate building on the other side, and then 2 separate buildings in the back. And the current layout doesn't look like that. And so I interpret Exhibit B to just be a reference as to this is the overall basic general layout of things, not binding, because certainly if it is, then those building configurations are problematic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll say from a legal perspective, I read the development agreement the same way Brandon does, that Exhibit B is there as a concept plan, but not as set in stone, so to speak. And I think for the ingress and egress and the width thereof, you default to the
So
C.
what's the, sorry to cut you off, but what's Robert, what are you getting at? You want us to have a 36-foot wide entrance on the north, the south? What are we getting at here?
Flow. We need to create the flow. I think that's
so
that, and they want the flow.
What? Tell me how that would increase the flow. Having a 36 wide, would you have an extra turning aisle, or would you have an extra turning lane? I'm trying to figure out how, practically speaking, that increases our already rate of flow. What are you looking to accomplish with the 36 foot wide entrance? I guess that's what I'm asking.
It alleviates pinch points.
Flow through it. Sorry, Tim, what were you going to say?
I'd say it alleviates pinch points. Those are all pinch points where you have traffic backup. So if you don't have a deceleration lane on the frontage road or a turn lane on the frontage road, or the widths of those entrances, you have pinch points. So we're just trying to eliminate those pinch points. Does that make sense? You're adding additional lanes. You look at South Weaver Drive, and that's I don't recall the width of that, but that has a center turn lane. And that still, we have a huge pinch point when kids are dropped off and picked up at that chartered school. So we're just looking at trying to help that so that traffic can continue to flow on the frontage road and not be stopped or put somebody in danger when they exit that road or enter that road, or when they exit the parking lot or enter the parking lot. You've got a couple of issues to look at. So we're just looking at those pinch points so that traffic can continue to flow through the parking, regardless of the commercial. Residential can operate independent, and on the frontage so that traffic can operate operate independent of the commercial and residential going in and out of there. So we're looking for you to have the answers, but we can see that there's some obvious pinch points when we start to see the numbers.
There is already a deceleration lane in place, but that's another issue.
Where?
If you
Not on
look at,
2700.
I'm looking at the aerial photo.
Those are not deceleration lanes.
You're not going to let us park there. So what are they there for other than to slow down?
Well, then you better restripe them and make them wide enough so that they're actually deceleration lanes.
Not wide enough for deceleration lane. They're only
We're talking about a different issue, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
And maybe that's part of this conversation is what can we do for solutions? You know, can we restripe? Can we widen it a little bit? Can we do some things? You know, that's not on your plan at all to help that. So if it should be, then maybe we need to relook at that.
We addressed that with our parking study, is the idea of widening the road, and it was not requisite based on the parking study. I mean, Joe Perrine, who wrote these studies, he's the premier traffic engineer in the state. He's the one who teaches all the traffic engineers in the state. He's a very sharp guy and knows what he's talking about. And so
I guess we should have had him on South Weaver Drive.
Yeah,
we probably should have.
And that's not the question. I mean, we're just saying that 36, 36 feet is what we require and what we need. And
it's
we make that part of your deal.
It's not required, but it sounds like it's an either or. It's not required.
It is required. If we, the planning commission,
if you, the planning commission, yes,
it's required. And at this point, I'm seeing the planning commission saying, well, yeah, we'd like to see that wide so we can see better flow. I mean, I'm not, we're just trying to make a better project out of this. And as I'm getting the feeling we're going to get a little bit of kickback, and that's not the point here. You know, I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm sitting. Anybody else?
So if I can try to carry that conversation just a touch further on another front.
Well, I have a lot of other things to talk about, not just parking and traffic flow. So.
Absolutely. It's still traffic flow, however. That's okay?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm understanding it correctly, you're asking us to approve this site plan as it's in front of us right now without considering a conditional use permit for the daycare center. And I guess what I'm seeing is I'm not comfortable with the site plan as is, knowing how far along you are in your conversations with the daycare center, because I feel like when that conditional use request comes before us and the details are borne out, I don't see how you can accommodate that amount of traffic internal to the site to then support the other portions of this development. And I think it puts us, all of us, city developer, everyone, behind the 8 ball. And if we don't have the conditional use in front of us to consider the daycare now, I'm just concerned that we're going to approve this site plan without contemplating the internal flow of the site in an appropriate way. Like I keep hearing numbers of 140, 150 kids plus the daycare workers, and I just don't see capacity here, and I don't see that capacity has been studied within the site plan. I totally agree that it's been studied on 2700 and 7800 South. I can look at those studies. I just don't see it internal to the site.
Okay, so is that something we can address with a traffic flow study? Because it has been addressed with the turning onto 2700. That's the bottom line. It has been addressed.
I agree with you.
Both directions.
I agree with you. Addressing it on the 2700 East, you have brought that up in your traffic plan. I guess mostly it's the traffic flow internal to the site that I'm most concerned about at this point. I just don't want to put you guys in a bad position too, where you come before us to do the conditional use permit for the daycare, and we've already hamstrung ourselves based upon the preliminary plat approval.
Look,
or site plan approval.
Yeah. let me let me just make it. Let's just make a proposal here. I'm just speaking off the cuff. Your residents don't want this commercial, okay? Can we all agree that? I mean,
I wouldn't necessarily agree with
every letter, Facebook post that's been post on the South Weaver Citizens United has been in total opposition to the commercial aspect of this project, and maybe the density of the residential. So, look, you have this concern that there's going to be too much traffic based on a business that hasn't even signed a contract or moved into the development. I don't know where to go from here. We've been doing this for almost a year and a half.
Well,
but do we just eliminate the commercial, or what? I mean, I don't understand. Where do we? At what point do we get to where we're not just getting hamstrung? I mean, we're literally at the 11th hour. Brandon puts in this thing that was never been discussed in any of our meetings about widening the roads to 36 feet. And I find that highly disingenuous. I don't appreciate it. It could have been addressed months ago. And so that's why I'm a little upset to read this memo and to have it, anyway. So if we can address this, I don't mind addressing it tonight. If we need to get rid of the commercial to make everyone happy, and you get a win, and we get it, and we get to go forward and start building, that's fine. But
well, just so you know, I've been dealing with this for 6 days. That's how long I've seen your plan. And it's absolutely independent of Brandon Jones' letter on the requirement.
That's fine.
36. And I'm looking to you for
let's work something out so we can make this thing happen. Let's make it a reality.
So I'm saying, here's what I see as an issue, and I'm looking to you to help me solve it.
It's a huge issue to take all that frontage and widen the roads to 30% more than they were, both entrances. It's a huge issue. Fred, go ahead.
If your 36-foot access is so important, and granted, we had some traffic studies to try to do that. The fire department made sure that we had 26 foot all the way around as far as loops, so that you have both directions, plus they can get their fire trucks in there. The reason that we have the combined building in the back has to do with a different fire marshal using a section that could be debated whether we can use or not, but we complied anyway. But if we were to add an additional access on the road on the north access, so if somebody's having problems or it starts to create some bottlenecks, I'm just looking at the site. On the north side of the north access, we don't have any room because of the canal, but on the south side of the north access, we do have a little bit of room there, and there's no reason that we couldn't put another lane there if that was that important to you, that we have a 36-foot access aisle. We have room.
50.
That would be the north access, and we could get a 36-foot access aisle. And yeah, we would probably drop from 24% landscape to 23.75 or something like that. But there is some room there without causing any problems with buildings, layouts, plats, anything else. If that's that important, obviously, we don't control the striping of the road, but as far as that goes, but we certainly can fix it so that if you've got some buildup, we can certainly add another lane there without too much trouble. Leland, you can tell me I'm up in the night, but to add the additional lane in the middle would be a lot more difficult based on where we were over a year ago. And yeah, that exhibit was reviewed and approved by both Planning Commission and City Council. whether it's legally or not, and you don't legally have to add that additional lane. We met the requirements. If you want to add an additional requirement and your legal department says that you can despite the development agreement, and you're looking for a possible solution, let's look at the North Drive. It will.
I'm fully agreeable to do that. If we got the room on the north entrance, let's put it in. If we can agree to that.
Rob, can I interject here?
Sure.
So I want to go piggyback on something Tim said. We've had 6 days to look at this. I'm the newest member of the Planning Commission. Some of these things that were done last year, I've never seen until 6 days ago. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a historian. And so I don't move through these documents as quick as some of my colleagues do. And honestly, I'm very impressed with the residents who have reviewed all 486 pages, not only once, but twice and 3 times. On top of that, we've gotten a lot of public comment today that we got today. I haven't had a chance to read through all that. I mean, I had a busy day at work today, had to grab a bite to eat, got to this meeting right before it started. So I really think that, and we're only on one issue, parking. We haven't even talked about anything else. I move that we table this, bring it up in our next meeting.
I agree with you. I'd like to table it. I don't want to bring it up in our next meeting. I'd like to find a separate meeting to do it by itself.
Okay, that's understandable.
I think there's a lot here, and we're just not going to rush through it. I mean, I gotta be honest. The site plan, the pictures. I'd like a 3D model. I'd like to see what this thing really looks like. And what you guys have submitted is not your A game. You guys are spending millions of dollars on a project. Bring us something so we know what it looks like on the back and all that kind of stuff.
You have
Bring
those photos. They're all there right there.
Only on one
I
side.
can't even see what the middle building inside looks like that's on the stilts. I haven't even seen that one. I just bring your A game. I would love to see how it slopes in a 3D model. I mean, this is a big deal, and it just seems like it wants to be pushed through and rushed through.
Rushed through. We've been doing this for almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
6 days.
Excuse me, can I say something? There seems to be even more issues that are coming up now. I don't want to table this and drag this thing out again. Let's get everything out on the table.
Let's get them out so we can address them at our next meeting.
So we know what your concerns are. That's what we thought we've been doing all along.
I agree with you.
Kim, we had these documents to Kim how long ago? A month? 3 weeks?
Back in
Don't know.
August, let's see. I think it was late July, mid-July, around the 20th, I think. But again,
Here's the problem with what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. Let's get all on the table. After you get to 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, the planning commissioners are just like, man, we've worked all day and we're trying to figure this out. And quite frankly, we don't want to make a mistake with you or the residences.
Well, let's figure out what the other issues are so we can address them at our next meeting and find a solution. We're not going to drag this thing on for another 6 months.
Well, and planning review board that's reviewed all this, WC3, the fire marshal, Brandon, they've already have gone through this thing 5 times.
But we haven't.
I understand that, okay? But what was all that exercise for? What was all the monies that we've been paying them for their reviews? No one said, hey, let's wait till we get the new board and then let's have them review it. They've been marching right along, giving us comments, and we're thinking that they're acting in good faith and we're responding to them. We've engineered this 3.5 times. I've had to pay that civil engineer 3.5 times what it would normally cost to get a project through, and you're still not done with this yet. And that's not fair. That's not even. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen any city come back and after 5 reviews come back and say, we're gonna start from scratch, because I just got on the committee and I'm gonna be here for 6 days and I need to look at it from scratch.
Has it been any secret that the planning commission was going to review this to you?
No, that's why we paid the fee for a special meeting. So let's get on with the issues that we have so we can address them.
I think there's more than can be handled in one night. We're not going to charge you for another meeting. Let's just make sure it's fresh.
So next meeting, can we just start with the issues that we have with the development? So we can, can we have it next Tuesday or next Wednesday so we can get this thing moving, so we can address the issues?
I can do next Wednesday. Anybody else in the commission?
I mean, this thing can't last another year and a half. That's just not gonna work.
Rob, sorry, Rob, I really do think we owe them where big rocks are. So at least we can have a more productive conversation whenever that meeting.
Right now, we had nothing. We got nothing. We got one issue, which is traffic flow. So let's get on with it. Let's find out what they are.
But it seems like there's way more issues that I haven't even read through enough myself either to try to figure out.
Let's meet Saturday morning with Brandon and Barry and go through the design and get it done. And then we can talk through the issues and let's do it.
So our issue is, to me, as a body, we have to publicly notice that, and that takes time. And that's the difficult part about getting our body together.
So then we already noticed this meeting. We're here. Let's get it done. Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's not a legal notice.
Okay, let me ask this. There's a motion on the table to table this meeting to another date. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, by roll call, I'll say aye. Wes?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Tim?
No.
Taylor?
No.
And I vote aye. So the ayes have it. We're going to table this meeting and we're going to move it to, we're going to continue the discussion on another day.
When would that be?
Let's decide that right now. I'm looking at my calendar. Kim, how soon can you get this noticed?
Since we're not gonna have to do another public hearing, because we've already done it, at any point. So whenever, we could do sometime next week if you're free.
Okay, I have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday free. How about the rest?
All day, because I don't want to make it too late and you guys get tired. There's a lot to go over.
Well, there isn't a lot to go over. We've been, both the planner and the city engineer have both said this meets and recommends it for approval. They both meet the code.
The sarcastic comments doesn't help. So
I'm sorry.
I mean,
want to know if we're gonna have enough time. I don't want to meet at 6 o'clock and we're, tired by 8.
well, I'm certainly not going to take a day off if that's what you're asking.
No, I didn't
No,
know.
we don't take a day off. It's
Okay.
just-
The thing is, this is, and you know this, you've seen the Facebook and social media, this is a hotbed issue for our residents. They want to see this thing. One, they don't like it, but they know it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. We want to make sure we get it right, because we are the ones who are going to have to live with it. You develop it, you come in and you leave. And whatever flaws there are with it, we deal with. And so that's why we're being very, very thorough with this. And if I would have loved to have gone through this packet thoroughly, but it takes me a little longer time. If you put a history document in front of me, I got it. But engineering plans, these reports, it takes me a little time. I apologize for that.
Wednesday or Thursday of next week, would either of those work?
Which day?
That's the 2nd or 3rd.
I could do Wednesday.
I can do Wednesday as well.
Wednesday, yeah.
3 of us. Tim, how's your Wednesday?
Wednesday's good.
I think if planning commission, if you had a chance to look through Barry's review of the zoning, which he went through already, and Brandon's review of the engineering, the two memos, and the fire marshal his memo stating that, you know, the ingress and egress were satisfactory to the fire code. I think those were probably the quintessential documents to review prior to our meeting. So.
Okay. Taylor, can you do Wednesday? Mine. Just thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yes, I can.
Is that yes?
I think so.
Okay.
It's hard to tell.
Tim, I didn't hear from you. Tim, you okay Wednesday?
Did you say Wednesday, September 2nd?
Yes, sir.
When are we gonna get Utopia?
I can do that. I can do Wednesday, the 2nd.
Okay.
And there are a couple of major issues in both of Barry's and Brandon's recommendations that we have to look at. So I don't think it's just a stamp approval of their letters.
No, that's not what I'm saying, but that I think would get you familiarized with the issues in the code that have been addressed over the past year and a half.
I've read through all of them.
I mean, Joe, is it possible to get better renderings than the paintings that we got? Something that's real 3D so we can see what's going on around all sides of the buildings.
Fred, you have that Revit 3D fly around technology or whatever it's called?
I have Revit, but to have a 3D model created by next week would be harder.
It
I can
doesn't need to be a
certainly,
model. You can do a drawing, a 3D drawing.
We have elevations of all four sides that have been submitted.
You have elevations, but there's nothing 3D. They're very flat.
that was why I had the renderings so that they wouldn't be flat. And I can certainly
those-
get the back building if that was your question is what does that back building look like? We can certainly provide some additional information for that.
Your
Yeah, that
renderings-
and what the backside looks like. Because
And renderings have no depth.
the black and white drawing that looks pretty ho hum.
Yes.
That's all I'm asking. I didn't think it was a huge request to try to understand.
Hey, just list them off so we can address them before next week. Let's do it.
You want some additional rendering and or drawings or shadows or something so that they don't look so flat?
Well, that and how that all looks like on the site.
I'll have to talk to Leland. Leland's got the site plan in 3D. I don't have the buildings in 3D at this point.
And Joe, I understand your concern, but I got to read through more of this to try to figure out exactly what questions to even ask. I have a few written down, and we covered parking was the big one. Drop off was another with the daycare. Snow, I mean, all I got was we're going to push snow to the side by the canal. I can tell you that's not going to happen.
We have like a 20-foot buffer between the canal and our property.
Yeah, but how are you going to do that if cars are there?
There's no parking there.
Okay. Let me
back west of the property.
Let me relook. I mean, because I'm seeing parking lot all around the property, so that's why I'm not sure I'm on the same page as you.
There's some drives where we don't have parking. But you want some additional, you want some information on snow. You asked about parking. You asked about flow inside the space. As far as that, you mentioned the 36 foot, and I asked if the north one would be an option.
Well, and I think you and I are seeing the same thing there, because I'm seeing 36 feet all the way up until you get into the development, not just 5 feet on the end. So I know I see what you're trying to do, but on the other point, I don't think you have enough room for that building.
Well, the 26-foot drive on the north wasn't there until staff came by. It was obviously over a year ago, came back and said, we're going to require that second access. We originally had the one access and we created that 26-foot drive on the north. And we certainly have enough room for a turn lane, which is what you get with a 36-foot drive, is you add another lane so that somebody can make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn.
Sure. I mean, that's just the way I'm seeing it. I think it's a flow thing. I know that you're frustrated and I'm frustrated.
So
That's
assuming we can get two 36-foot wide entrances, is that going to satisfy you?
Well, I don't think we're seeing the same thing. I think you're just seeing an approach that's 36 feet. I see an approach that's 36 feet and a road that goes, the road goes all the way back to the back part of the property at 36 feet.
Well, the code only says the driveway. Right, Barry?
Yes, that's correct. It says the planning commission has the option of requiring 36 feet driveway.
Well, I think you may want to just understand a little bit deeper what we're talking about, not just look at, oh, we'll just change something from 26 to 36. We're looking at flow.
That's what we're hearing the issue is.
And that
we can talk to our traffic engineer
and I want you to show us how, when you start.
Sorry, somebody's breaking up.
Jamie, you breaking up?
I may be breaking up.
All right. Well, here's the deal. The commission's decided to table this, and we've decided the 3rd. Is that what it is? Second. 6 p.m. And we'll go from there. So I look for a motion from the planning commission to adjourn.
I've got a couple of questions I need to get kind of answered here. Jamie, question for you. Was the city offered that piece of property by UDOT? UDOT's required, if they're going to dispose of a piece of property, to offer it to the local city first. I want to know if it was offered to the city.
I don't think that's true, Wes.
It is true.
It goes half and half to the adjacent owners.
First of all, it goes to first of all, it goes to the city to see if they want it. If the city turns it down, then it can go to the adjacent owners. Or it goes to the original owners, and if the original owners turn it down, then it goes to the city to see if they want it. I dealt with that many times in state parks whenever we did land activity.
So have I.
Why is that an issue for the planning commission? How is that even relevant for planning commission purposes?
Whether you legally own that strip of property or not.
I'll talk to our commissioner. Wes, I'll look into that. I've been with the city about a month, so
Lots of luck.
I can figure out the background on that.
Right.
And I'll get back to you if that's okay.
Okay.
Can I adjourn, Wes?
I got lots of questions, but I think we can wait on them.
Can you get them down in writing?
Wes, why don't you take a picture of that and text it to me so we can work on addressing him and actually make some headway at our next meeting.
It's all scribbles on different stuff here.
So Rob, we have one more agenda item, and that's planning commission comments before we adjourn.
Okay, well, if that's what we want to do, I'm okay at that. Commissioner Boatright,
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Grubb,
Yeah, just wish we would have carried on tonight, but that's okay.
Commissioner Johnson,
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Walton?
I would like an explanation on what you read earlier about public hearings. What was that?
That I read?
Yeah, that you read.
I
Think
can
about meeting virtually. Is that what you're referring to, Taylor?
Yeah.
There was an executive order in place beginning in March, and it lasted for a few months, and it allowed public bodies to hold meetings virtually without an anchor location. It basically waived provisions of the Open and Public Meetings Act. The legislature in the past 2 months met in special session, and it modified the Open and Public Meetings Act. And so if you meet without an anchor location, you're required to have in place an order signed by the chair of the body. And then that has to be read at the beginning of the meeting, indicating the reasons why you're meeting without an anchor location.
Okay, so not so much a determination that we're not going to go back to a regular public hearing or a public meeting. Just a point of clarification that was sent down through state channels, right?
It's a requirement of the act, and where the commission is meeting electronically without an anchor location, we needed to have it in place. It doesn't require future meetings to be held without an anchor location, but you now have a 30-day window within which you can do it for the reasons outlined in that order.
Okay, I mean, that's what I wanted to have a comment or at least a discussion about the Zoom meetings. I know you guys, I'm frustrated by them. I don't know if there's another way that we can go about this, only because, you know, I've done everything that I can to boost my connection here, and sometimes my words get garbled, that you all get garbled, and I'm frustrated by that. So I don't know if there's an appetite to consider going back to a regular meeting within chambers or not. But
I don't know if any of you have been to a city council meeting, but they're holding in their regular meetings at City Hall. And they've got it, you know, they've got the partitions in place between the seats, and they've got the seating in the audience area separated enough so that, I mean, it's very limited, the number of people that can attend because of that separation, but it seems to be working.
We'll go this next 30 days and then see where we're at, reevaluate.
All right.
I have nothing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
On favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We'll all see you on the 2nd at 6 p.m. and we'll continue this conversation.
I will send out the invitations.
Thanks, Kim.
Welcome.